You're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis. I'm the founder of Reliant Search Group. I'm here with Scott McGohan. You're the former CEO of McGohan Brabender.
Yep.
The author of Culture is an Inside Job. Great book. And now the founder of a new company.
One morning.
One Morning.
Yep, one morning.
Yeah, One Morning.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
This morning, as you were walking in, I was sending a gift of one of my employees as a byproduct of reading your book. I was inspired to be conscientious. And this book has had a big impact on me already. And to be honest, I didn't expect it to be so good. Well, I don't know, just because you're local and we have friends in common, I'm like, no, that's a regular guy, right?
Yeah, I know that guy.
Man,
He can't be good.
It's a great work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm really inspired by it.
It was a lot of fun.
Well, it seemed like you referenced in the book all the way back to some early days in your career. So whether you were writing it or not, the work has been decades in the making.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
From start to finish in the book, you talk about destructive heroes. How do you define that? What's a destructive hero?
Yeah, I mean, every organization probably has one. Mm. And if you don't know if you have one, you might be the destructive hero. Mm-hmm. Historically, they'll come from like a sales background, where they'll be a very high performer or an account management, responsible for big accounts, or related to a founder. Mm-hmm. So almost like an untouchable, where they can really, unfortunately, they get away with a lot of stuff. Owners can get drunk on the revenue. Employees know they're untouchable. So they just get to behave any way they want to behave. And they're destructive. No question about it.
You assume then that they're probably high impact, high producer kind of folks and insulated a little bit because of that.
Most likely they're like narcissists. So they can actually believe that everything they're doing is virtuous and noble. And they are just a hot mess.
I worked in tech a lot. And we used to, I had the brand in my head is the cocky consultant. It's kind of the know-it-all. And oftentimes guys who really do know it all, like they're the best architects, the best software developers, whatever, the best technical minds, but they're rough around the edges, contentious with customers, and you can't let go of them because they produce 10 times what everybody else does. And, well, you think you can't.
Oh, yeah. Even in the book, it kind of walks through, hey, if you want to do some math, figure out how often you talk about this person and who else is in the room with you. So you get like HR, a CEO and a couple other people, and add up all those salaries. And then figure out how many hours a week you spend talking about this person or dealing with this person or protecting this person or saving this person. And then you have to add up the people that have left because of this person and the people you've had to rehire because of this person. Yeah. And you get to that point where all of a sudden you think, I can't let go of this person. You do that math, and you're only a third of the way there. You're only financially there. Right. You're not emotionally there. You're not spiritually there. You're just financially like, this is not going to work.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you get those folks who are abrasive and negative or whatever, or rude, and everybody that they interact with goes home that day a little less content with their work and a little less happy about the work that they do.
100%.
Yeah, that's hard to quantify.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This wasn't intended to be a book review, but I really love the book.
Thanks.
But if you don't mind me digging into it a little bit, the really early in, I realized like how much of your own dirty laundry you aired out for us, and I thought that was really generous. And because you don't have to, what inspired you to do that? To like kind of reflect on your life. And then confess what a jerk you were. And several of these stories, including cheating in golf and everything else. So like, he's really saying that. He's telling everybody.
Oh, yeah. They say life's a wonderful teacher and she rarely gets an apple on her desk. And I think sometimes, at least for me, my ego and pride, it was so important to me that I was just like Humpty Dumpty sitting on a wall. And then I fell off the wall. and I broke into a million pieces. And I learned so much by just giving up and surrendering. And I knew there were people just like me that were maybe successful from the outside, but inside lonely, broken, tired, and afraid. Mm-hmm. And I thought, hey, if I just call a spade and say, I had to learn all of these lessons the hard way. I had to learn them through experience. Mm-hmm. And I'll just tell you where I made mistakes. Because, you know, I've read some books and I've heard some people speak about organizational culture and maybe different things, but they haven't done it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, like, if you haven't done it, if you haven't been in the foxhole and doing that hard work, it's really hard to bring credibility to that subject matter. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does.
And then just making sure that I was just really honest about where I came from was important to me.
I guess the central theme of the book, it appears to me, is that culture isn't about brand, it's about character. It's a byproduct of the character, particularly of the most senior leader. And then you kind of go on to expose all these compromises you had made in your character and all these kind of aha moments you had about growing and maturing in your character. They say, you shared a great quote earlier, I'll kind of share one I've told my kids over the years, is that, you know, a smart man will learn from his mistakes, and an even wiser man will learn from the mistakes of others, right? And I feel lucky because a lot of the things that you speak to are things that I've tipped, you know, that they're problems that probably could have gotten worse even in me.
Oh yeah.
And so I've kind of been challenged and you know, inspired by some of the stories you share, but the including the idea of like starting, you build your culture. I went through a brand change last year. It wasn't just a logo change. It was like a who are we kind of experience, right? So bumping into you, and then we ended up having coffee and reading through that book was really timely, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because it kind of affirmed some of the things we were doing with, in terms of like starting with what matters most to you, what's your character, and then building out a culture from there. But that, you know, that the title didn't, I guess what excited me about it is the title didn't say that to me clearly, but it was really early in. I could tell that this is about building your own culture as a person first, right?
You know, the original title was What Smells in Here.
Okay.
Which is really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because the book really kind of talks about the 5 senses of culture. So what people see with their eyes, what they hear with their ears, what they feel in their hearts, what they can taste in regards to affirmation, compensation. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the first motive everybody looks at is, and not literally like, what do I smell? Mm-hmm. But is motive. Why does this company care about me? Mm. And, you know, what I was kind of walking through the pinging between those two titles. Mm-hmm. I mean, personally, I liked culture as an inside job.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And the What Smells in Here was just kind of a provoking way to just try to get somebody to maybe pick up a book, if that makes sense. It's
an appeal to the negative. It's like, you know, everybody likes to slow down for a car wreck, right? So What Smells in Here is kind of an appeal to that unfortunate nature in all of us, that we want to pay attention to what's dirty and ugly. But the inside job is, I love the title because it tells you just enough without telling you all of it. Mm-hmm. And then you get into it and realize that it's really about seeing yourself clearly first. So I have a question for you about that. So, you know, you ran a CEO of a company that you're intimately connected with growing up, I presume. Yep. I don't know, what's the full history, or what's the earliest history of you and McGohan Brabender?
I started in 1989. There were 7 employees.
Okay. So it was a micro company.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. We were just, you know,
little agency,
little tiny company.
Okay.
And scrappy and nimble, and you know, and we just had a lot of fun. And you know, my dad's philosophy was, if we take care of our customers, we're always going to be okay. If we take care of ourselves, we're dead in the water. Mm-hmm. And it was always about reinvesting back into our customers and back into the community. And that was kind of fun to watch.
I work with a lot of small companies, but also a lot of big companies, or a handful of big companies. A lot of times what I observe in bigger organizations that are trying to identify themselves and communicate who they are and even influence and shape who they are, which gets really difficult when you're large. But one of the things I've observed is you don't just have a person. Obviously, it has to start with the top, but there's so many people are employed by an organization in which they really never interact with the chief executive or
Right.
the C-level folks, right? Their interactions are with their line managers, directors, and VPs, right? So the complexity and the difficulty of figuring out whose character is shaping this organization, and that's a question that came to my mind, right? How do I don't ever really experience, I can think of a couple large employers I worked for back in the day.
Yeah.
I never experienced the character of that CEO.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when we redid our core truths inside of MB, and this is just my opinion, but it is the role of the CEO. You cannot delegate that. And if you think, well, I'm going to let somebody else take care of that, let me know when you're finished, and I'll read the script. Now, you also need to collect an army of people around you that are probably going out and asking people compelling questions about your organization, so it's authentic. You can be a really great company that wants to sell to private equity and build beach houses for the owners. Just tell people that's what your intent is. Don't lie to them, and tell them, hey, we're just going to build this company and everyone's going to be great. We're going on vacation, like all that stuff. And although that wasn't my dream was, and our dream at McGohan Brabender was to sell our company back to our employees, right? To be an ESOP,
Okay.
which is a completely different model.
Yeah.
And so the whole mission of a culture is to make sure that it's authentic and it's honest. Now, as a CEO, your number one job is communication. That's your number one job. Storyteller.
True.
You're telling a story. And you should be in front of that workforce all the time telling stories.
It's a really good point. So I guess even if you're not shaking hands with that CEO, you should be interfacing with them in some capacity, right?
100%.
The big meeting or the weekly newsletter or the...
And then, what's really cool is when you got a really cool culture, and then you have a team of people that are like culture carriers. So they carry that culture forward. It could be a frontline manager. It could be, just anybody. What you begin doing is you begin collecting stories that magnify what you believe. So like one of our core truths was we invest in people's lives knowing the rest will follow. So everyone deals with life on life's terms, and sometimes life's terms suck. Things happen to people. And what we've seen is what we would do is we would experience that in somebody, and then we would tell a story about that person, about how in their difficulty they rose to the occasion. Now, if you're an employee and you're hearing a story about somebody else, here's the real intuitive part. It's be like, wait a minute, I want to be in the next story. So I'm going to emulate what I heard. And it becomes contagious. Yeah. It's like, that's how I get my name on a stage. That's how I get my name in that video. I'm going to emulate what the company wants. Does that make sense?
It does.
And it's such a cool way to bring that to life.
And then your job as the leader is just to make sure the things you're encouraging folks to emulate aren't, oh, I hit this goal at any cost, but I exhibited this character, right?
The hardest thing I ever heard was what you allow in your organization, you encourage. So whatever you allow, you encourage.
I'm so glad you said what you said about, it's the CEO's job or the top executive's job to drive culture, because I have run into organizations where that's the mandate of the HR person or the COO or something. And somebody else is like, it's your job to kind of transform our culture. And it's a little broken approach.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's helpful. I appreciate that. Because you've got that as a small business, I'm a handful of people. Obviously, that culture comes right down to my work ethic, character, whatever else, and the things I acknowledge. And as a medium-sized company, there's a lot of little tentacles. And a large company, man, it's like steering the Titanic, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. It's got to go all the way to the top. It has to come down. And communicating is their biggest job, right? So.
Oh, yeah. And you got all kinds of ways you can do it. Personal handwritten notes. You got a cell phone. You can do a video. You can send that. You can do this.
True.
Inside your
sharing
organization.
content, however you communicate.
I mean, the fact that you say, well, I don't have time for that is probably not a very good answer.
The ability to write thank you notes or send a care package to somebody or, promote somebody. All of those things are dependent upon some measure of financial success in the organization. It takes time. It takes money. It takes, doing this instead of that, right? So obviously you have to crush your goals. You have to improve your business. You have to accomplish. And that takes a lot of time and attention. Mm-hmm. And so how do you manage the balance between those things? The kind of the foundational necessary obstacles that you have to attend to and that you have to focus on and you have to push forward just to meet financial goals and to succeed. And then the character ideals that would define the culture of the organization. And how do you balance those things?
This is what I believe. I believe it all starts and begins with dignity, respect, and love of others. And I think no matter what, if you show up in that world first, the work will always get done. So in regards to personal handwritten notes or phone calls or, and by the way, those are all free.
There's a ton you can do for nothing, right?
I mean, it's so, one of the things organizations, would do is they do like big events or they'd give away things. It's like, hey, be careful. Because when things get tough, you might have to unwind that because of your financial statement. And that could hurt your culture.
True. Yeah, if it's happy hours every week and trips to Cancun every quarter.
Sushi for lunch, and then all of a sudden someone's like, oh, our culture's slipping. No, our financials are slipping. So your culture, what you do inside your culture should never be a condition of profitability. Ever. Ever. And when you allow people to show up in their workplace with life's terms in their pockets and their purses, divorce, fertility, financial disarray and mental health, substance abuse, like all those things that everybody deals with on a daily basis. You allow that to come in and you love them for where they are. Man, the work will always get done.
Yeah.
The work always happens. Always happens.
It's wild how like the chills that come through me when you talk like that make me want to go crush goals.
Yeah, because they will figure it out.
Right? Yeah.
I'll give you an example. In 2010, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, I remember writing an email to the workforce saying, we're going to be okay. I mean, because really, most of the workforce felt like,
that was a big impact to your business.
Oh,
right?
My gosh, like the government's coming in.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah, they're insourcing all of your work or whatever.
Yeah, and so it was like, I think we'll be okay because, go back to my dad said, hey, we just serve our customers. I don't know the last time the government made anything easy and less complicated for private enterprise.
Doesn't happen often, does it?
Nope. And we said, hey, look, this is what they're doing, and it's going to be complicated, and customers are going to need our help. So we kind of retooled McGohan Brabender, and we took it down to the nubs. And we built this brochure for employees that said, we're on a quest for the naysayers, the bystanders, and the victims. This is what a naysayer says. This is what a bystander does. This is what a victim says and repeats. Things like, oh, give it some time. They'll go back to the old ways. Or that's not the way we used to do things. Because we told people, hey, we can only afford people to believe in this mission moving forward. We had about 7 or 8 people leave. And the rest of the people really bought into it. Like, hey, let's go into this brave new world and let's figure this out together. And it worked. It was a bet, by the way. I mean, I'm not going to say like I'm the smartest person in the room.
There was risk.
But there was risk. But it worked. It's like, we're going to move those people out of the way. They're just not going to make it. And they weren't bad people. We gave them outplacement services.
Okay.
You just weren't ready. And I get it. And then we had some people, hey, quit asking me that question. I'd say, well, which one are you? Because if you believed in where we're going, you'd stop asking me. No, I just want you to stop asking me.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
Yeah. I was a customer of yours after that, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a COO of a software consulting practice here in the area. And Ended up buying a health plan through you guys. You guys helped facilitate our benefits and all that kind of stuff.
What was the name of that company?
Smart Data.
Oh, yeah.
They still operate here in Dayton.
Yeah.
The whole experience from the sales rep to the service folks and then the ongoing support or whatever, you could tell there was something different about the kind of people that we were interacting with. Oh,
great.
And it felt like the kind of character and the kind of care that mattered to us as an organization. I forget that was because I wasn't deeply involved in the details, and neither were you.
Yeah.
I forget that I was your customer at one point, indirectly.
Well, I'm glad you had a good experience.
It was great. It was great. I've referred people there since. One of the questions that comes to mind, Scott, is, this kind of transformation that you've described about yourself, going from destructive hero to leading, healthy organizational culture and then kind of building up culture heroes in your organization. And that's a big transformation. Was there a pivotal moment, or was there a series of experiences? Was it a point in time thing that happened? What's brought on the transformation?
I have an identical twin.
Okay.
And then I grew up with a lazy eye, so I wore a patch on one eye.
Okay.
In school, so I know every private
difficult.
joke. Oh yeah. And then I'm dyslexic, so if you're a little kid in school trying to read, you miss like complete sentences of words. So self-worth was just in the tank.
Interesting.
And being an identical twin, all you're doing is fighting for your own identity because you got someone sitting right next to you who looks just like you. And my mom dressed us just alike, and it was just all of that. And then, so from a very young age, I wanted to create an identity, and it became a false identity. Whereas my opinion of self-worth was performance, the faster I went, plus the opinion of other people. Meant more than my own opinion of myself. And it almost killed me. I had this big, gigantic, gaping hole in my life, and I was trying to fill it with everything. Cars, homes, boats, stuff, clothes, you name it. And nothing would fill that hole. And then, I got on my knees and I asked God to take away the pain, or sadly, I was gonna do it myself. And that was, by the grace of God, I've just felt like this peace, like it's going to be okay. It's going to suck, but it's going to be okay. And then I really just began to unpack, like, who was that 8-year-old little boy in a treehouse that loved to be by himself? What did he want to do? And then what did he want to do? And why did you let society tell you lies as a little boy? Like, I used to like to paint and draw and write poetry, but boys don't do that. So I got to go meet that little 8-year-old boy in a treehouse, and I got to shake his hand and say, "Hey, look, last time we talked, this is what you wanted to do." And then I met, a loving, graceful, God who I thought was a principal or a cop that was just out there to needed attention.
Form, huh?
Yeah. And he showed me what love was all about. And what I've learned is the good book says, we're taught to love our neighbors as ourselves. But if we don't love ourselves, then humanity doesn't have a shot. So we're all dead in the water. So when we have the capacity to begin to understand what loving ourselves means, then we have the capacity to love other people. And then what gave me a ton of energy was going back and healing and redeeming some of the past and some of the mistakes that I'd made. And then deciding that, hey, I'm 43 years old. I get to rebuild my life.
Yeah. You're young still, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I get to be a new dad, a new husband, a new friend, a new leader. And society is going to say, he's not going to change. You just have to say, well, look, take a good look. And man, am I glad that happened.
I'm glad it happened too, man. Congratulations on a big, big change in your life.
Well, I appreciate it.
That story's impactful to many people, including me. And probably like me, people are impacted in ways you'll never see, right? Because you've been fortunate enough to share your journey, your story in kind of a scaled way that impacts a lot of folks that you don't necessarily meet. So appreciate that. I kind of still feel like a kid in ways. I don't feel like I'm done figuring out how to be a decent person and grow and mature. And I'm glad you didn't feel like it was too late at 40 years old, because I forget I'm in my 40s too. Am I going to be 46 this year? No, I think I'll be 47. I lose track, but I forget that I'm all grown up.
Oh yeah,
because I still feel like I'm figuring things out and still very curious. And,
I feel 30. How old do you feel? I feel like 33.
Yeah, it depends on what we're talking about. If I'm doing something athletic, I was telling my wife the other day, I used to be able to jump off a roof. Like I could jump onto my feet off of a roof to the ground and then just go about my business. And now I can't jump off 3 steps without my knees.
Oh, 100%.
But mentally, I kind of still feel like a teenager.
Yeah.
I guess like I'm still a little insecure in ways, and I'm aware of my insecurities. Mm-hmm. I'm still kind of ambitious and delusional about my view of all the things I'll accomplish and all that kind of thing.
Oh, you're 100%.
I still feel a little bit like a teenager. Mm-hmm. What makes you feel 30? What's that mean to you?
I just think that I just see a lot of people that I'm blessed with but good health. So, that health can stricken all of us in a number of ways.
That's right.
But I just see so many people that are always tired and always worn out. Mm. And it's just like, that just does not look like a fun way to go through life. And I believe this in some respect, but your attitude about life is a choice. Mm. You get to make that. Mm. And what you can't control are the things around you. But you can control yourself. Mm-hmm. And I was such a victim for so many years. Mm-hmm. I thought the whole world was against me. Mm. And the whole world, if you just read my script every day that I wrote for you, and you read that, life would be perfect. Mm. The problem is you didn't know I wrote you a script. And if you did, you probably wouldn't read it. And it just became just an absolute epic nightmare. And it was just so messed up. So messed up.
Life's tough, I don't know anybody who's had just entirely. If you have an easy life and you're healthy and you live to be 100 years old, you've been to a lot of funerals.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, nobody goes through life without a tremendous amount of loss.
Right.
And pain and suffering. It's just part of it. You were talking about your own kind of bottom point, or rock bottom moment, or whatever, and it brought to mind some things I've been party to in my family, and everybody deals with those difficulties in difficult ways. And I think a lot of mental health and mental health struggles, and then mental health strength, the joy and the optimism that you can find in the midst of all the ugliness of life. A lot of it just comes down to how you cope, how you see the ugliest parts of life. And I've seen plenty of, unfortunately, too many folks very close to me cope with the most difficult. Oh, it's been a long day. I'm going to have a drink. I need a drink. Or they get addicted to drugs or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
It's something to remove you from the awareness of just how hard life is, right? And I've got a 7-year-old. So I've got grown kids, and then I've got a 7-year-old. So there's a big space between them. But I asked him the other day, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about life? He said, I think the words he said were happy and loved. I was like, wow, caught him at a good moment, right?
Yeah.
Because he feels tired and grumpy too at times, right? But I caught him in a good moment. But it occurred to me, like, you haven't been to a lot of funerals. You've never really experienced a health problem. You've never found and lost love or any of these things, right? And it breaks my heart to know that him and my other kids are going to experience all those hardships.
Oh, yeah.
And are you going to stay in the moment and see and feel the pain, honestly, sincerely, and get through it? Or are you going to bury it somehow, hide from it? And what I heard you describe is a way of doing that, which is creating this kind of false, defining things in a way that's not real, right?
Yeah.
Same is true in substance abuse, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're putting your mind into some state that's not real to kind of get yourself out of these pains.
It's just a narrative that we create. And actually, the foundation of the new company, One Morning, is all based on that.
Tell me a little bit about that company. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's really around, so every organization has an EAP.
Okay. What's an EAP?
An employee assistance program.
Okay.
So everyone's got one.
Mm-hmm.
Only 20% of the workforce knows it exists. Those that do know think HR is going to sick them into it and feel like if I call anybody, then everybody knows my dirty laundry.
Yeah.
Which is a lie.
That's how I felt about those. You're right.
They're not true. And the interesting thing is about them is they're free.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm an employee and I try to go call a therapist today in Dayton, it's going to probably take me 10 weeks. It's going to cost me $125 an hour. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's not worth it, because it is.
Sure, yeah.
But if I have access to therapists all across the country that I can do via text or phone or whatever, and it doesn't cost me anything, then wow. So one morning is a gentle nudge to get people to utilize existing employer-based mental health substance abuse services. And the reason for that is everybody is dealing with something.
Yeah, they are.
And then one of the issues that I did, like in writing the book, and what I'm doing with One Morning, is I'm bringing life to everything. Mm-hmm. So like at McGohan Brabender, before I left, I shared my own story around maybe considering taking my life to the workforce, to everybody.
Wow.
And I asked everybody who was willing to maybe share a story about fertility, domestic violence, suicide, financial fear. And we found 6 or 7 people willing to tell a story in a 3-minute video, just like sitting here, about themselves. And it absolutely enhanced our utilization, tripled, quadrupled. I mean, almost by 10 times the number of people that then picked up the phone and wanted to talk to somebody about something. So that's the whole intent of One Morning, is to let everybody know that everybody's dealing with something.
Yeah.
And then it's not even like saying alcoholism is a good example. So if no one's going to get and Google alcoholism. Is that fair? Like nobody wants to do that.
Right. Generally speaking, the nature of an addiction is that you're running from something.
Yeah,
so you're not running to it.
100%. Yeah. And so the whole mindset of the stories that we'll create through video content is like, why do I embarrass myself when I drink? Or financial fear. Like, who wants to look up the word bankruptcy? But potentially maybe the story might be, why am I afraid of my mailbox? I mean, for some people, it's like, yeah, I'm terrified of my mailbox.
Yeah.
Okay, let's bring light to that. And the issue is the fact that none of us are taught how to deal with these things in school or growing up. Maybe our parents gave us some good skills. But if we don't have tools to deal with life on life's terms, then every problem looks like a nail, and every solution's a hammer, and everything gets broken. I mean, I'm sure there's something you've gone through that I haven't, that if I go through it, I could ask you and you could help me.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
I'm looking at that picture of that forest behind me, right in that sunlight. There's something you've gone through that if I go through it and I knew it, you would carry me through that forest and I could go towards that sunlight instead of turning around and going into the darkness. And everybody needs to understand, man, we're not on a game show. Take that makeup off, take your suit off, come to the table with ratted hair, and let's just talk about life on life's terms.
Isn't that the hardest thing, is just being honest about the things that stress you, that worry you, that create fear, that create tension in your relationships. And, when I reflect on those things about myself, it's I hide them, or our tendency is to hide them. I've hidden those things because I'm embarrassed that these everyday things that other people deal with, being stressed about money or relationship thing or whatever. I don't want to tell anybody that I have this health problem or whatever it is, right? It's like we somehow don't want to be embarrassed by that. But to your point, we know full well that everybody's dealing with something. Life is a collage of those things, right? I
work with a lot of people in recovery, and they'll say, well, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, oh, why are you embarrassed? I'm just embarrassed. I'm like, all right, let me ask you a question. Is what you did in the dictionary? I'm like, what? I'm like, is there a word for it? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, oh, congratulations.
It's common enough, right?
Yeah. You didn't define a new word. True. Be like, wow.
I felt like that about divorce for a long time.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to tell people. I still hesitate sometimes to say, oh, I'm divorced and remarried or whatever. It's like, it's like defining my life based on this failure or whatever. And it took a while for me to get to the point where I was just, this is a thing that I went through and that I learned from, and it's disappointing and it hurt, and here I am. Right? Yeah. And it's part of the whole me.
Right? 100%.
You said in your book that the most important word in the English language, maybe aside from a person's name, is the word help.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
I think what's interesting is we will answer the sound of our name anywhere. Mm-hmm. So if you're walking through the airport and I yelled Aaron, and I wasn't even talking to you, you're going to stop and turn around. And then everyone's going to listen to the word help. Like if I yelled help in an airport, everybody turns around. Like everybody is built. We are built and wired to help other people. We're not as arrogant and as self-centered and as egotistical as everyone maybe paints us out to be. We were built to help. And then some people are just afraid to ask for help. Help is everywhere. Everywhere. And surrendering was the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. I didn't lose, I actually won.
And when you say surrendering, what do you mean by that?
Just acknowledging I don't have the answer. I mean, when I wanted to die, I walked in the recovery rooms in Dayton and I said, my name's Scott and my soul is cooked. That was my answer. My soul is cooked. And then people there just like taught me how to love them. Because there's a saying in that they say, if you want what we have, you'll do what we do. If you want what you have, you'll just keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, okay. And that's language I've never heard before. But what I saw in them is I saw peace, serenity, authenticity, honesty. What I didn't see in them, by the grace of God, I didn't see what car they drove, what clothes they were wearing, what watch they had on. Right? Because that's normally what I would look at. Yeah. I'd say, well, if
that's
you're
how
not,
you felt measured. That's how you looked at yourself.
Hey, if you're not successful, then what an arrogant, pompous thing. Yeah. I'm just being honest. I hate the fact that I just said that out loud, but it's honest. But there was so much authenticity and love there. I was like, holy God, I've never experienced that before. I don't know where that comes from. And man, then it was off to the races after that.
Yeah, it kind of touches me personally because I've measured myself by my own. I remember as a kid, one of my ambitions was to grow up and do a job where I had to wear a suit. There was this image I had in my head of like the businessman. And I feel like that's followed me a little bit my whole life, even to today, that I measure myself by what I have or what I've accomplished or whatever.
I think we all do. And by the way, you know what I think is just realizing that it's never enough.
Right.
And realizing.
Like, what's the number? Right, or whatever, or what's the title, or what's the whatever, the award, or whatever. What do you? Then what?
If you get
then you're
there,
just done.
You want more. Right. But acknowledging that in a healthy way.
Yeah.
In a healthy way, because we're all chasing the rabbit. I chase Sparky. You ever been to a dog track?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, greyhounds. So they chase this thing called Sparky.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen the lead or whatever.
100%. And I was on that dog track for decades.
Okay.
And what I didn't realize, like a lot of those dogs, is you never get to catch Sparky. Sparky never gets caught.
Rip off, right?
Yeah, Sparky goes around the track, goes on the can, and the dogs are like, "Where's Sparky?" Yeah. And I chased Sparky forever, and now I know Sparky's still there, right? So that's maybe the like the goal or whatever. It's never enough and all that. I don't have to chase it. I just know it's there.
You provoked an idea about kind of socioeconomic conditions. I'm a big fan of free markets and opportunity to grow a business and that kind of thing. And the downside to it is that kind of the competitive nature of our economy and a free market is it depends on competition, and it also depends on a certain measure of ambition, which obviously depends on some degree of discontentedness. I want more. It's kind of a primary part of the recipe. And it can be destructive if that starts to wane a little bit, you got to feed it. In fact, a big part of marketing and sales is provoking a need, right? You have to identify and articulate and help people understand a need that they have.
Yep.
In other words, stir up their discontentedness with whatever they have and show them another thing that they can buy or whatever, right? And I've always found a little bit of a conflict in that. It's one you got to make a compromise decision on. You got to find a balance. But I've always found a little bit of conflict in that. I'm trying to serve somebody's need, but at the same time, I'm provoking a need. And am I provoking that need based on a there's never enough energy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it's just
if you love your business and you can be helpful and useful to others. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I've never sold anything.
What do you mean by that?
I was in sales my whole life. I felt like I never sold anything. I felt like I had knowledge and I had information and I had energy. And I felt like if you wanted my help, I was available to you to help you. And if you didn't, you just tell me now. Mm-hmm. But I never really felt like I had to sell anything.
Yeah.
Like be in sales. And I served food last night at a homeless shelter.
Okay.
The Good Neighbor House in Dayton.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes like those events like really give you a sense of, this is different. And it's been a long time since I've been down there.
Has it?
Yeah, so it's not like, I'm patting myself on the shoulder for going down there. A buddy of mine asked me to go down and I went and I got to see humanity. And I even told my wife, there were some people, quite frankly, if I saw them outside of that, they would be pretty scary people to me. Mm-hmm. But when they were coming through the line, they were kind. Mm-hmm. They were thankful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. They would say things like "bless you," and I would never expect that.
Yeah,
that's arrogant, right?
Sure,
it's judgmental,
right?
It's all those things. But then I got to see like beautiful humanity happen last night. Mm-hmm. Not from the people serving, right? From the people that were there, and I needed that dose of reality yesterday.
My wife did a stint in social work a couple times actually. She's a big-hearted woman. She taught me the idea that bad behavior comes from unmet needs, and so when you see somebody who's scary or somebody who's drug addicted or somebody who's aggressive or just out of sorts and doing the wrong thing in the wrong place in the wrong way, you know that there's unmet needs. There's a big pile of unmet needs. And you see somebody gossiping and being nasty, the troublemaker, whatever, even if it's a pretty wealthy version of those bad behavior. It doesn't have to be the drunk and homeless person. It can be the well-behaved lady at church or whatever who's just kind of nasty secretly. Yep. But we don't get to judge that person either, because even that bad behavior comes from unmet needs.
I'm making this T-shirt for one morning. On the back it said, "Be nice to bullies. They're the saddest people we know."
Yeah, true.
And I think she's right. There are, because nobody wakes up and says, "I want to be a complete raving jerk today."
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Nobody. Life gets sideways. They have no tools.
Yeah.
They have no tools.
All of my worst behavior is when I'm the neediest. If I'm introspective a little bit and I figure out if I'm nagging, I'm negative, I'm debating with this or that or whatever, it's because there's some void.
And normally some of the behavior that they'll use actually protected them in the past. If you grew up in a violent home, and anger and yelling stopped your father from hitting you. Mm-hmm. Whenever you get conflict, the only thing you know is, I'm just going to yell. Yeah. And it's going to protect me. Mm-hmm. So when you have maybe a sense of empathy and maybe just a different position where I'm looking at somebody yelling, and I always like to say when someone's doing that, I always try to think of them as, what were they like when they were 10 or 8? Because that's not who they wanted to be. And I think your wife's not right. There's something there. And it's normally it's not against us, right? They're fighting themselves. I mean, big time. And
Or
I mean,
some big fear that they carried with them from
they're
childhood,
punching,
right?
and they're punching in the air.
Yeah.
And it's, and I hope one morning like just brings life to that in a different way.
Have you struggled since with this self-worth or, your energy to live?
Oh, great question.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is no. And the pain was so bad. When I had a suit on the day I told God to take away the pain, and it was bad. But I tore the shirt sleeve off because there was a fray on the sleeve, and I tore it off. Because normally what I would do is I would put maybe a shirt that had a tear, and I would put it in the dry cleaning bag, and I would dry clean it like 3 or 4 times. Like, why do you keep doing that? So I tore it off, and I just threw the sleeve in the room in my closet. And then for some reason, the next day I put that shirt sleeve on the counter in my closet. And I've been in recovery now for 16 years. And I go, I lead a recovery group. And I've gone every week for 16 years. And there's 16 tokens on top of that shirt sleeve where I get up in the morning and I pray. So I've got what the bottom looks like and feels like. And then 16 things that sit on top of it that says redemption, restoration. And then, one of the reasons why I wanted to die was I caught myself in the mirror and I saw myself, and I hated the guy looking back. And I'd like blow dry my hair, or I'd get ready or brush my teeth, but I never looked at myself in the mirror. And I did, and it was just like, holy moly. But today, not in an arrogant way, but I can look at myself and I'm like, I kind of like the guy. Yeah. I like being by myself. I like to write. I can go somewhere by myself, and I'm not beating myself up. So that shirt sleeve lets me know, and by the grace of God, that's where I am right now. That shirt sleeve, that's available today. There's choices that can carry me all the way back there.
I see.
Alcohol, sex, drugs, bankruptcy. I mean, a series of choices. I can go right back to that shirt sleeve. It probably wouldn't take me that long.
Right.
But I don't want that
Just
shirt
like a company culture. You can unravel it pretty easily, right?
I don't want anything to do with it. Yeah. So, knock on wood.
Right. The journey that you went through, kind of recovery from a pretty low place, was informative and had a big impact on how you define company culture. I find it interesting that you wrote the book that you wrote about company culture as opposed to writing a book about recovery and mental health or whatever else. But the reason I find it interesting is because you've pointed out how clearly they are entangled. I love that, because one of the things that is most off-putting to me about company cultures is the facade that so many of them have. And it's honestly, it's de-energizing. It kind of zaps you when, oh, look at our great culture, and it's hype. And the hype is it's the insincerity of it. It's the not being able to see clearly. And so I think what appeals to me deeply about the way you address company culture is that it's not about hype and brand and selling, that it is about the difficulty of this journey of life, acknowledging the human experience for what it is, embracing humans that are imperfect, and using that kind of vulnerability to address folks in a healthy way. Work is such a big part of what we do.
Oh, yeah.
It's huge. And so using that avenue to speak to the things that actually matter the most to people, because selling insurance and passing resumes around does not. That does not matter most to people, right?
No.
These are important little things that we have to do to function in life, right? Yeah. Like somebody's got to put the sidewalk down, and somebody's got to do repair the HVAC, and somebody's got to do the accounting, and those are all necessary things. But these are not the most important things in our lives, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's our relationships and our families and our inner struggles and all those things. So using this workplace where we all spend so much of our time, especially now, that we've got more people in the workforce working for companies as opposed to just working at home, that kind of thing. So it's where so many of us spend so much of our time. And then, positivity, energy, address to mental health is all of that is addressed by and large with pizza parties and high fives and slides in the office and just a lot of noise and nonsense.
Yeah.
And it furthers this facade, right? It becomes just another version of this facade that we've built up that mirrors in some ways alcohol and pursuit of material things and all these things we do to cover it. So I really appreciate the fact that you've kind of spoken to a way to use this very pervasive set of relationships we have in the office to address the kind of the inner health that we all need, right?
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that's my kind of synopsis, my summary of it, and what I'm taking away from your book. I'm almost finished with it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about writing it from an individual spot. But I felt, there's a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists that know a lot more about emotional healing than I ever will. Mm-hmm. And my only experience and where I came from is just my own experience. Mm-hmm. I feel like I had a lot of experience in organizational culture, because I've watched some things and I saw some things and I made a lot of mistakes that way. So originally, I wanted to write it more like on a personal level.
Okay.
But I there's a lot of people in the world of psychology and psychiatrists and recovery that just have a lot more experience in that space than I did. But I do have experience in regards to organizational culture, how to set one, how to manifest it, how to grow it, how to make it more contagious, inviting, and all of that. But my whole hope was not that an organization would read that, but maybe the young 30-year-old that told him or herself, I'm not good enough to be a leader in this company, would read that and say, I can be brave. I can carry this forward. I'll make a dent in this company.
Yeah. What message or what one thing would you like that young leader to know or to take away from this content if they're listening? What would you say to that young leader who's kind of still growing as a person, right? A grown up.
Yep.
But not done shaping themselves and who they could be.
Know yourself better than anybody in the room. So self-awareness might be one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves. And then go lead until someone tells you not to. Most likely, you're telling yourself you can't lead because everybody wants to follow something.
True.
There's an interesting part in the book where I ask somebody, just pretend like you can watch a conversation around. Somebody says, hey, you work with Aaron. What's Aaron like? So get super honest in regards to what they would actually say.
That's a great framework for self-awareness.
Oh, like word for word. And then write down what you would want them to say. And that's the gap.
Yeah.
Like, you can't give what you don't have. So normally, if I had to say, what is one thing you'd want humanity to say about you? One word. What would that be?
About me?
Yeah.
One thing I'd want humanity to say about me, I guess that I was a genuine help to them.
Yeah. So what's interesting is if that's what you want, every time you see that in humanity, you have to call that out. Normally, we don't call out what we want. So if I want authenticity, right? Hey, man, that guy's authentic. When I see authenticity, I got to call it out. And then I think when I call it out, what I get is it ricochets. Boom, boom.
And it trains you to kind of focus on your own.
100%. I mean, we were in a meeting yesterday, and this guy had a really nice compliment to this guy, and this guy shrugged it off. I'm like, hey, do not do that. He's like, what? And I'm like, that was a gift. You just received a gift, and you just threw it back in his face. He's like, I didn't mean it that. I'm like, oh, I understand you didn't mean it.
Right.
But that's what humanity does. Mm-hmm. So you needed to understand you were good enough, you're kind enough to accept that present. Mm. You know, and like eyes got watered.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Why do we do that? Why do we shrug off compliments? Why do we not accept those gifts?
I just think sometimes we don't think like we're good enough.
Yeah.
Plus, I think we're taught that too.
Yeah.
You know, we're taught that, and and I think what we should do. My dad, when we were younger, my brother, he used to always say, "You guys are really humble." We had no idea what humble meant. We go, "Thanks, Dad." And we take off, right? But like now, I know what the word humble means.
Yeah.
And to accept that as a gift, as a present, is really, really important.
Well, I want to spend another hour talking, but I know I got to wrap it up.
Perfect.
Let me ask you one last question.
Yep.
What's next for you with the new company and this new chapter in your life? What challenge are you going to run into? How are you going to overcome it? Like, where are you going?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I loved being.
Wait, let me add something to that question,
Yeah.
Scott. How can I help you?
I think I loved being the CEO of McGohan Brabender. I forgot what it was like to maybe have all those resources available to me. Mm. So today I'm sitting there and I'm building this company. I've got a great brand.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to need a contract for that. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, Scott, you're going to need a contract for that.
Yeah. Who writes my contracts?
100%. Hey, Scott, you're going to have it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like I forgot. Mm-hmm. And then so as like a visionary, I feel like I've got that gift. I feel like I can paint a picture. But sometimes when it gets down into the nubs and the detail, I get tangled.
Yeah.
I get tangled and I get twisted. And then like this morning, I got up really early to get some stuff done. And when I left, I was like, I got in the car and I'm like, you've accomplished nothing this morning. Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
You know how I experienced that is that tangled feeling. Mm-hmm. I'm the same way. I feel like I'm best with a team of 10 or more or whatever. And I've got enough things to juggle and decisions to make, whatever I feel productive, without having to lose sight of where we're going. And I feel like what happens with me is this has happened in the last couple of years as I started my company. I've had to do the in the weeds things, the details. And what happens when I am forced to do that is I start to get nervous that I'm not paying attention to what's next. When I spend days in a row without kind of reflecting on the big picture impact of those things and how they come together, I get nervous that it's a mess and that I'm working on something futile.
Oh, yeah.
But the bouncing back and forth from those things has been very, I think it's been healthy for me just to be humble and respect the effort that goes into it and that kind of thing. It's been a very good couple of years for me. For my character, I guess.
Oh yeah.
But when I'm writing a contract or doing the sales call or doing all these production kind of things, it like who's in charge?
Oh,
I'm like, oh shoot, that's me.
Oh yeah.
I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Wait, what's my mandate to myself?
Right. I got to call HR. I am HR.
Yeah.
Let me check with my CFO. I am CFO. Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show, Scott.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.